Hi Book Break, my name is Lucy from the channel Lucy the Reader, where I talk about YA and classics, and today I'm here with a reading vlog where I read The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I've never read any Wilkie Collins before, so I'm definitely up for the challenge, and this video is going to be split into 3 parts because the novel is split into 3 parts, and because it is a mystery or sensation novel, there's a lot going on in each part, so I thought it would be really good to split it down and talk about it as I read each part and then talk about the book as a whole. So I've read the entirety of the first part now and I am really loving it. I can't believe I haven't read this already. I'm so intrigued about what's going on. I have no clue where the story is going to go, and it's just one of those books where I don't think you're going to find anything quite like it. So this is highly regarded as one of the first mystery novels and one of the first sensation novels, which is a genre that was coined in the Victorian period that combines melodrama with mystery and some gothic as well, and you can definitely tell that there are gothic influences in The Woman in White. So far the book has been told in quite a few perspectives. The main perspective that the first part is told in is by a man called Walter Hartwright, and at the start of the book he talks about how he is going to narrate the story, how he has seen it and how it has happened through his eyes, and he's also going to bring in other people's narratives as he doesn't know the whole story. So there is also a section in the first part by Vincent Gilmore, who is a lawyer and who sees things in a bit of a different perspective than Walter. And the first part ends and you go into the second part in the perspective of Marion Halcombe, who is probably one of my favourite characters so far in the book. I really love how Walter is very different to Marion, but their personalities really click. So the story so far is told in lots of different perspectives and mainly talks about Walter as he goes to Limmeridge Hall, which is this very gothic building, and he is an arts teacher and teaches Marion Halcombe and her sister Laura Fairley. Laura is this very beautiful, very feminine character, and Marion is her polar opposite. So where Laura is very blonde and pale, Marion is very dark and is seen as a very masculine character, and it's often commented that she acts very masculine, and as you read from her perspective, she's constantly talking about how she is trying to appear masculine, or her characteristics are masculine, and there's this comparison between the masculine and feminine. And one of the things that Wilkie Collins has done really well so far, and which is one of my favourite things about this mystery genre, is the contrast between 2 different things. So you get 2 different perspectives, the perspective of Walter and then Vincent, who think very different things. So one of the characters who's had a big effect on the plot so far is Sir Percival Glyde, and he is set up to marry Laura, and Walter, because he loves Laura, isn't very happy about Sir Percival, but Vincent at first thinks that Sir Percival is very respectable, and so you get this contrast between how he acts in a very respectable and very admirable manner, but in reality there's something that people just don't like about him and that turns people against him, and it's the contrast between these personality traits that makes it so fascinating, because as a reader I have no clue what to think. One of the biggest characteristics of sensation novels is identity, and I've definitely seen parts of this in the first part of the book, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how that is upped in the last 2 parts, because Laura, we are starting to see at this point in the novel, is starting to lose her identity. She's starting to lose those qualities that make her her. She's more submissive, and she's starting to give in to the things that before she wouldn't have given into. And there is a scene where you see her give up her heart, and I'm really interested to see how much of a role that plays in the rest of the story, because one of the biggest factors in the book so far that isn't a spoiler is that something in Victorian society is that when a woman marries, she gives up her property to the man that she marries. But as part of the novel and the part that Vincent narrates, you see that part of her wedding contract that she wants and that Vincent wants for her is that if Laura dies, then her money doesn't just go straight to her husband, it also goes, so she makes a will and can dictate who that money goes to. But one of the most uneasy things about the novel is that this doesn't happen, and so really that is where the plot starts. The fact that if Laura dies, then Sir Percival Glyde gets all of her money, and that's a very precarious position to be in, and you can imagine how that's going to go wrong. And I am kind of dreading reading on because I don't want anything bad to happen to Laura. I really love her as a character, and I feel like she is a very typical Victorian female character who you'd really think about, but also I think there's a lot going on internally in her mind that I'm fascinated to get to know further. So I'm looking forward to seeing how identity deteriorates throughout the novel and how other characters' identities really shine. And I'm going to read the second half now, and I shall report back to you once I have read it with my thoughts. So I have finished reading part 2 and I am distraught. Wilkie Collins really stepped up in this part and I am speechless because I just can't believe some of the things that happened. I was so uncomfortable at times, I just couldn't stop reading, and I have no clue how he is going to pull it all into an ending in the third part, because there were some huge revelations, lots and lots going on. And I know I talked a lot about identity, and I really loved how that furthered in the second part and how actually it is constantly changing, and Laura really changes in this part, and you see her relationship with Sir Percival change, and it's this constant game of cat and mouse and this back and forth that adds to this uncomfortable feeling. I hate books that make me feel uncomfortable, and so I wasn't expecting to really like the book in this half, but what really made me enjoy it in the end was how that uncomfortable feeling went in hand with the fact that I couldn't stop reading because I had to know what happened, and so it was just this really exhilarating ride of a book. The majority of the second part is told from Marian's perspective, which I really loved. I think that she is my favourite perspective to read from so far, and I don't think that that will change. I love Walter, I think he's a great character, but he's very dreamy and tends to be quite romantic in his feelings, whereas Marian is very practical and very matter-of-fact about things. And so as you read her perspective, I feel like hers is the most honest and truthful of the perspectives, because Walter really idolises and loves Laura, and Marian has this attachment and bond to her sister, but at the same time I feel like she's really analysing everything and seeing it in a very realistic manner, and I feel like she's the least biased maybe. I don't know how that is going to change as Walter is introduced again in the third part, and I really love how Wilkie Collins has constructed these narratives because it is constantly changing, and as a reader you're going through and you are learning new things but also revisiting things that have already happened. And in the second part I feel like Wilkie Collins really goes back to the things that he's already set up and you see them coming into play. So for example, all the law stuff in the first part, which may seem very boring, really has its moment to shine in the second part, and you're like, oh, I get why this is such a big thing now. There are characters who are mentioned briefly that really are key players in the plot, and so it is honestly an exhilarating ride of a book, and I don't feel like I fully had this experience with any other book that I've read, and I can see why this is such a perfect example of a mystery or sensation novel. Another thing that I think has a much bigger part in the second part is the gothic. So in the first part we really see Limmeridge House and how that is a very gothic typical building, but in the second part you have that to another extreme in Blackwater Park, which is extremely gothic, and it's got this lake which is very metaphorical because the lake is diminishing and it's said to have this curse, and how there are different buildings and parts to Blackwater backwater park, like the boathouse, which plays a big part in this second part, and how the rooms and how they're connected, and the library, all of these features that are very typical in Gothic novels but really add and enhance the mystery of the place, and you know that something bad is going to happen, and that just amps up as the part progresses, and you just wonder to yourself, what is going to happen, because I know that something is going to go wrong. I have no clue what is going to happen in the third part, so I can't wait to read it. I have no clue how Wilkie Collins is going to make all this right. I have no clue if it's going to be a happy ending or a sad ending. I have no clue, and so that is the thing that's making me want to read on and on and on and find out what's going to happen. I feel like I'm really invested in the story now, which maybe in the first part I wasn't as much as I could have been, but now that I've read the first and second parts of the book, I just have to know what's going to happen. So I'm going to read the final part now, and I will sum up at the end my full thoughts on The Woman in White. I am so excited. So I have finished The Woman in White, and that was a real reading experience and a half, I've got to tell you. I really loved it. The final part was so good and wrapped up everything so well, and now that I've read the whole thing, I really think I could talk about the structure, because I think that's one of the standout parts of it. It really reminded me of books like the first Sherlock Holmes book, where the first half is about the crime that's being committed and the last half is the intricate details of how that happened and what led up to it and the motive behind the crime. So I feel like the first part of The Woman in White really sets out how the crime could happen and sets out the tiny details that mean that it can take place. Then the second part is it actually happening, and then the final part are the repercussions of that happening and finding retribution for the things that have gone on. And also I feel like the main thing in the third part that happens is that you figure out what is going on in each of the characters' heads as they are committing crimes, and I was just reading it absolutely mind blown, because I couldn't believe as I was reading it the things that Wilkie Collins has set up that I hadn't even figured out as I was reading it, and it's so clever in that sense. My favourite character remained Marian Halcombe right from the start right to the end. She reminded me of characters like Shirley from Shirley by Charlotte Bronte, female characters who actually have these male traits, and at first I wasn't too sure if this was Wilkie Collins being a tiny bit sexist, but in the end I actually thought that she was purposefully like that, because you have this comparison between her and Laura, and I think if Laura wasn't there then it would be a tiny bit sexist, but actually it's quite a good social commentary on how women should be, and in portraying lots of different types of women in the book. It is one of those books where you get to the end and you think, I should have seen all of this coming, but I really didn't, and I think that that is the magic of it, because as you get to the end you can see each tiny plot strand that have made up this bigger picture, but as you're reading it you really can't see that. And I really want to read more Wilkie Collins now, and I want to read more mystery and detective and sensation novels, because I really do think that this is a genre that maybe I wouldn't have chosen to read before, but now I can't get enough of it and I want to read more and more and more. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on The Woman in White, if you've read it, or if there are any mystery or sensation novels that you've read before that you think that I should read next, because it's definitely a genre that I would like to explore more. The Woman in White was a real pleasure to read, even though there were times in the book where I just couldn't bear to find out what happened, because it was quite painful and almost scary at times to feel like there are characters like this that are based on real people, or there are parts of their characters that you can recognise in other people. But I still loved it and I still highly recommend it. It's one I'm going to be talking about a lot on my channel, I'm sure, and recommending to lots of people. So you can go and find my channel at youtube.com/LucytheReader if you'd like to find out more about the books that I like reading. I read a lot of Victorian literature and lots of classics, so you can find out more videos by going over to my channel. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for having me, Book Break, and I will see you soon. Happy reading!